This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell, and joining me today in the studio are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar. We also have principal second violin and artistic administrator Merwin Sue, and on the phone, the TSO's music director, Elaine Trudell. And we also have a very special guest joining us by phone. That is, and I have a fanfare for you, that is composer Evan Williams.
I'm honored. Wow.
Yeah, I had to dress it up a little bit. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
Now, we should mention that the reason that Evan is on the phone with us is because the TSO is presenting a piece of his in its world premiere, and this is part of the Romantic Rhapsodies concert. It's happening Friday and Saturday night, 8 o'clock p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art Peristyle. Evan has joined us to talk about his new piece and the connections to one composer in particular. This concert is entitled Romantic Rhapsodies, but I'm kind of thinking of it as all roads lead to Rachmaninoff, because you've got the Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2, you've got André Mathieu's Piano Concerto No. 3. André Mathieu, a Canadian composer, we'll talk about him shortly. And Evan Williams, your piece is called A Ghost Wandering in a World-Grown Alien, which has nothing to do with ghosts or aliens, but it is a quote from Sergei Rachmaninoff that inspired this piece. So before we do anything else, Evan, let's hear from you what this piece is about.
Yeah, so Merwin contacted me, I guess, about a year ago from now, and he mentioned that he wanted to have a new piece for the Toledo Symphony, and before the pandemic, members of the Toledo Symphony had played my harpsichord concerto, Dead White Man music, which, Brad, you featured on your Living Composers from Bowling Green. And he said, you know, what we really like about your music is that you often engage with, like, nostalgia. And I was like, yes, I do that. And so Merwin mentioned that they would like a piece that engages with nostalgia around Rachmaninoff. And so I started thinking about that, and I came across this quote that he said. He was talking about how, as we know, Rachmaninoff, composer of the early 20th century and mid-20th century, he was a little bit almost behind the times, as it were. He composed in this very late romantic style when other composers were experimenting with atonal music and serialism and all that stuff. And he said that he had tried very hard to, you know, write in this style and to embrace this style, but he just couldn't. He couldn't embrace it. It wasn't for him, and that's where that quote comes from.
Yeah, we're very glad that it wasn't for him, because he was, the quintessential romantic and wrote some of the great romantic pieces of his time. Can you talk a little bit about your music for this piece? Give us a little preview.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You said there's no ghosts, but there sort of are. You sort of hear the ghost of Rachmaninoff's themes. I steal themes from the Rhapsody on a Theme by Paganini, his second and third piano concerti, his liturgy, and then I mixed them with his contemporaries who were more progressive, like Stravinsky and Schoenberg. So it's and you also have there's electronics in the piece of some of those things, and they're distorted and changed in interesting ways. And so it's him almost like wandering through this forest of musical themes, some by him that are distorted and some by his contemporaries.
Well, you have ghosts, and it sounds like you have aliens too in this piece. You were going to say, Merwin.
I love the fact that you used the word stole, that you stole the themes, because, I mean, as we know, good composers borrow.
Stravinsky code, yes.
Exactly. Great composers.
Good composers borrow, great composers steal. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Igor Stravinsky.
I do have to say, Evan, I saw that harpsichord performance at the museum that we did.
Yeah, one night.
Were you there for that?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
I was so nervous for that because it was premiered in New York, and New York is hip and progressive.
I've heard of
and
it.
before the concert, this guy behind me, he didn't know I was the composer. He's like, "Dead white man music. I wonder what that's all about." And I got up. I was like, "I don't want to talk about it," and I got up and talked about it. And then when I, at the end, I got up and took my bow. That guy was the first guy to stand up and give a standing ovation. I don't know. Perhaps it was he felt guilty because he said something.
I remember how beautifully the audience responded to it, and how.
Yeah, I was so honored. Yeah.
Well, and what's kind of cool about that piece is you have some quotations in that piece as well. That hence the title, "The Dead White Man Music." And you do that in this Rachmaninoff piece, but that's not something that you commonly do, right?
No, I quote music all the time. I have pieces, based off of just, one of my pieces, "Beautiful Death," is just a deconstruction of "When I Am Laid in Earth." Yeah, I love that, taking music of the past and, recontextualizing it.
That was definitely kind of the why I was like, oh, Evan's the perfect person for this, because it's not, I think there's been so many times where, composers are asked to create something in response to something. And as we mentioned previously, sometimes that can be, that can feel artificial. But I think that, I've always thought that Evan is very thoughtful about how his music fits in with the tradition. It's also sometimes how it doesn't fit in, how it has to challenge that, how it has to reinvent that. And I thought that especially for a composer like Rachmaninoff, who was so aware of that, I really thought that Evan would produce something very thought-provoking. So
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yay!
Well, Evan, this is your first time on Toledo Symphony Lab, and we have a tradition here, at least for the last few episodes, of our guest coming in. I was actually reading your title when I said that. Our guest coming in for the first time has to tell their story, right? So, Evan, what I want to hear from you, your story of how you got interested in music, a little bit of your background, anything you can say to get to know you a little bit better. And I've got some choices of music. I kind of went down the rabbit hole here. And let me give you 4 different choices, okay, for background music. So we've got this one. It's not really ghostly or anything like
Sail Away.
Yeah, there was a little Enya in there, yeah. I'm with you. Orinoco Flow.
Here's your story of music number 2. Depends on what you're going to tell us. Here's your story number 3, which is inspired by the romantic side of Rachmaninoff.
Love it.
So that's a little boom chicka bow wow there. And finally we have your last one, which is the piano lounge lizard version. So, if you can remember now, which one do you want?
I think we're going to have to go with number 1, Enya.
Number 1, you're going to go Enya?
Yeah.
All right, you got 3.5 minutes to tell us your story. Just take it away.
Okay, well, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and originally I was not raised with classical music. My parents listened to a lot of music, but classical music wasn't one of them. My first exposure to orchestral music of any kind would have come from film scores. And my dad was a huge fan of the Star Wars saga and movies like that. And so when I was first getting into music, I wanted to be a film composer like John Williams. But eventually I went to college in Wisconsin, the Lawrence University Conservatory of Music, and, got into concert music and decided that that's what I would do. After graduating from Lawrence, I went to Bowling Green State University, where I met Merwin and Brad and got to work with Toledo Symphony for the first time. From there, I did a doctorate at the University of Cincinnati, and since then I've been working a few teaching jobs, Bennington College, back at Lawrence University, Rhodes College here in Memphis, and in the fall I'll start teaching at the Berklee College of Music in Boston.
That's great, and congratulations, by the way, on that appointment in Boston. It's really prestigious that you're going to be teaching at that school.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Well, boy, you finished with plenty of time to spare, so I took the music down. But
I would be good at those presidential debates.
Yes, indeed. I love that you mentioned Star Wars, and you talked about that, because just last week, a week ago, the Toledo Symphony did one of those concerts, where they play the soundtrack, the John Williams soundtrack.
I love that.
And we watched the film, and it was The Empire Strikes Back. I did save this pew pew sound effect from our guest last week when we did our Star Wars special, Tony Geftis. So, the ghost of Tony is with us still.
Pew pew. There's that ghost again.
Yeah.
And of course, we just had May the 4th.
That's right. We did it on May the 4th.
May the 4th. That was the date of the concert. And they did it at the Stranahan Theater, and boy, it was sold out. I mean, people were overflowing. There were costumed characters there, I assume, from Disney, and we had Darth Vader, and we had all kinds of stuff going on there. So people taking pictures out in the hallway. It was really a wonderful experience. Sorry you missed it, Evan.
Yes, definitely.
See what happens when you're off being a composer?
When you leave Toledo, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So it's interesting, the things that you said about growing up with music and being turned on by the scores to those films and by John Williams. I think I can hear a little bit of that cinema going on in your piece, and certainly in this piece from the way that you've described it, connected to Rachmaninoff. Elaine, we haven't heard from you in a little while, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, let's talk about André Mathieu and this Piano Concerto No. 3, because André Mathieu, a Canadian composer whose life overlapped with that of Rachmaninoff. He was a child prodigy, and Rachmaninoff admired his work. Why don't you tell us who Mathieu was and this concerto in particular? And then I want to also ask you, Elaine, about the pianist Jean-Philippe Sylvestre, because that's somebody that you know. And have you worked with him before?
Yes. Hello, Brad. Hello, everybody. Yes, of course. By the way, your French is great, as usual.
Yeah, that's because you gave me a primer before we started. So
c'est bon.
Yes.
Oui, c'est bon. Let's start with André Mathieu.
Okay.
André Mathieu was, as you said, a child prodigy, but very, 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 very young. He talked. He was maybe 4 months old. He walked. He was like maybe 6-7 months old, and
wow.
He wrote his first music when he was maybe 3 or 4. So it was very, very impressive. And our society here was not ready to have that, and that's a very sad story actually, because he was amazing. At 6, 7, he did his first recitals. He went to play for Toscanini. He played Carnegie Hall as a pianist and composer before he was 10.
Yeah.
And finally, he wrote this, not finally, but he wrote this concerto when he was 12, the Concerto de Québec, his third concerto. Now, don't look for 1 and 2, you cannot find them. But the number 3, it's called Concerto, Romantic Concerto, or the Concerto of Quebec, where he's from, the province of Quebec. And then he went to study, because his father was a very well-known composer. Also, his name was Rodolphe Mathieu. Very serious man, very serious composer. He had the connection with Wilfrid Pelletier, who was from Montreal also, but was the assistant of Toscanini at the Met. And that gave them a special connection to meet Toscanini, to premiere his concerto in New York as well, when he was 12 or 13 on the piano as a composer. So it was a huge deal. And then he went to Paris and he studied with the best composers at the conservatory there. When he came back, that's when it got sad a little bit. He was 16, 17, and nobody was ready to have that kind of genius. We weren't that artistically evolved. We had a thing that was called the silent revolution in the 60s, where I'm from, because before that it was very much how could I say, people who would work in shops, or people who would work in as lumberjacks, and people who would work before that. And the church was very, nothing against the church, of course, but here it was so predominant, and people would not go to school for a long time, and it all changed at the end of in the 60s, and people started to separation of church and state, and also people starting to have more and more an idea, education, culture, also motivate businesses to local businesses to be more successful. So before that, being successful, and even at that time, successful or being very different or being like he was a genius, was actually something a little negative. And for him, he wound up not being understood, alcoholic. He died in his 30s. What he did, he played piano tones and bars. It was a very sad story. But when he was very young, at the age of 11, 12, Rachmaninoff met him and in New York, and he heard him play, and he said, this young person, is the only one that comes after me. Nice. So a little bit pretentious to say like that, but hey, he's Rachmaninoff. He can say what he wants. But nobody's as great as him. So, and you can see I wanted to call this program initially Rachmaninoff and his heir, but people don't know Mathieu enough. So I thought maybe we introduce the genius, this young adolescent genius. And
you're talking about Mathieu or Evan?
I'm a little bit old, but
what? No, Evan's piece is amazing. No, Evan's piece is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
It's great, and I don't know if he talked to you about what we're going to hear from Rachmaninoff in his piece that would merge into the orchestra. It's it's something I really adore, and the way he merged them together is so natural. I mean, a lot of composers do that, and it sounds like they work too hard at it. It sounds a little fake, but for him, it's so really, really natural. I can't wait to conduct it, and I'm very happy to do the premiere of his piece, and feel very, very grateful about that. But
what an honor! Thank you.
Continue. I beg your pardon?
He said thanks.
Oh, I just said thank you so much. That's an honor.
No, thank you. I listen. I mean, if you don't do what you do, I don't have a job.
Okay. Well,
no need for a conductor if you don't have pieces.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Einstein also leave a quote about Mathieu talking about what a genius he was, and that coming from Einstein? I mean, that's pretty high praise. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's kind of unexplainable. You know, when you have a kid that talks at 4 months old, you know, I mean, with words.
Yeah.
And he writes music when when it's not like, it's like Mendelssohn, it's like Mozart, you know?
Yeah.
It's at that level that it's really, really sad that he couldn't go on. André Mathieu is now being celebrated after all these years. I mean, there's a film about him that's been out for a few years. The hall we play in my orchestra in Laval is called the Hall André Mathieu Hall, and there are a musician, Alain Lefebvre, pianist, and the pianist we're welcoming for a concert, Jean-Philippe Sylvestre. They're making a huge effort to record all his music. I've actually conducted Jean-Philippe Sylvestre 2 recordings with Orchestre Métropolitain, the Atma label of the Concerto de Québec, which we're going to hear, and also the 4th Concerto. And he actually also wrote some fantastic chamber music that Jean-Philippe also has recorded. So there's a movement now to recognize that genius, which is something special. And, we didn't have that many. There's not that many in the world that happen in any generation. So I think it's more than time that we play more of his music in Canada, but also abroad. So I'm very pleased to present this important composer to Toledo.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Before we go any further, talking about the composers, including Rachmaninoff, on this concert, I've got a little quiz, and Evan, you can play at home as well if you like.
Awesome.
It's the honor system, right? So, because we can't see you, so we don't know what you're doing. Anyway, the way that we do the quiz is I have 5 different questions here, and I'm going to ask them, and I'm asking you all to write down your answer, or Evan, if you don't have a pencil, just remember, 5 different letters here, A, B, or C. It's multiple choice. You get 3 choices for each question. The title of the quiz
or not
is the 6 Degrees of Sergei Rachmaninoff. Really, it's only 1 degree because all the people on this quiz knew Rachmaninoff directly. So the idea is I give you the action that they did, the way that they knew Rachmaninoff, and you name who it was, okay?
Mm.
So who allegedly conducted the premiere? Oh, actually, I had some quiz music. Let me bring that up for you.
Wow, this sounds just like Rachmaninoff.
Rachmaninoff.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Rogue One for a minute. We were back to Star Wars. But
6 Degrees of Star Wars, right?
Yeah. There's a little trombone action going on here, and that is not in Elaine's honor. It's actually in Evan's honor.
Yay.
Although, yeah.
Oh wait, Evan, you play the trombone?
Yes.
Yeah, Evan
So
is a trombone.
wait a second. We're premiering 2 works by trombone composer conductors in consecutive concerts?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a trombone mafia thing. We don't talk about that, right?
Oh, we don't talk about trombone.
Yeah.
You know what they say, right?
Yeah.
You know what they say? The definition of a gentleman is somebody who can play trombone but doesn't.
Is there room for someone who can't play trombone who doesn't? That would be my category. Yeah. Silence. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first question is this: who allegedly
We're
conducted?
very good at counting rests.
Yes. Who allegedly conducted the premiere of Rachmaninoff's First Symphony while drunk? Allegedly drunk, not allegedly conducted. Was it Alexander Borodin? Was it Modest Mussorgsky? Or was it André Mathieu?
Wait.
Okay. So A, B, or C? All right.
A.
Second question. Hang on. Second question. Who showed Rachmaninoff a movie? Was it David Selznick? Was it Walt Disney? Or was it Howard Hughes? A, B, or C? Okay, third question. Who was the fellow student of Rachmaninoff's at the Moscow Conservatory who described Rachmaninoff as lazy? Was it Reinhold Glier? Was it Alexander Scriabin? Or was it Aram Khachaturian? Okay, A, B, or C? And
What was the first one again?
Glier.
Glier, yeah. Okay, which was not a teacher of Rachmaninoff? Which person was not a teacher of Rachmaninoff? Was it Alexander Zilty, or was it Nikolai Zverev, or was it Pyotr Tchaikovsky? Okay.
Are you making up these names?
A, B, or C? Yeah, I'm making them all up. And the pronunciation, I'm making that up as well, as I often do.
I think you got Tchaikovsky right.
The final one here was, who was Rachmaninoff's literary hero when he was a teenager? When Rachmaninoff was a teenager, was it Leo Tolstoy, was it Alexander Pushkin, or was it Anton Chekhov? A, B, or C? Okay. We'll come back to that, actually, in a minute. Let me take out the music here. Let's talk a little bit about Rachmaninoff, because there's so much stuff to talk about in this Symphony No. 2. I mean, this has got that great adagio movement, right?
Actually, Elaine sings it really well as a country and western song.
Oh, this I got to hear. Elaine, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there. He ripped it up from a country tune. Like, never gonna fall in love again.
Wait, you're saying Rachmaninoff stole the melody?
Well, borrowed or stole,
and then he stole the other part from All By Myself, and then wait a second, he wrote all of this before them, right?
Yeah, the other people were clairvoyant.
Rachmaninoff must be the most ripped off classical composer, romantic composer ever.
Yeah. So the Symphony No. 2 makes an appearance in some other subsequent compositions.
Do you think we could add Elaine singing "I'm Never Gonna Fall in Love Again" to the soundboard, please?
Well, we have your daughter. We have your daughter. We may as well add you, Elaine.
Well, okay. Well,
good job, guys.
Yeah. There she is, forever enshrined at age whatever she was.
Can I tell you something about this symphony for me that's very personal?
Please.
Yeah.
I've hesitated. It's the first time I'm going to conduct it.
Really?
I've hesitated on programming it for the last 20 years.
Why was that?
I've been studying it. Not really. I've been studying it. I've been turning it to every possible side, analyzing it, and until this year, I just didn't get it. And of course, the melodies, you get. They're like that third movement. I mean, with the melody, which I won't sing again, but is probably one of the most beautiful, like most melodies he wrote, right? One of the most beautiful melodic things ever. So that's not a problem. I mean, I understood, like when you hear it, it's just beautiful. But there's so many layers, and a little bit like some of the people that critique him that say, well, it's a little bit dated. I had one conductor who was a big mentor of mine that said it's like an old ham. You have to put a lot of mustard on it so that it tastes like something. And
ham. I thought you said hand, like an old hand.
Also, not incorrect.
Yes, a ranch hand, maybe.
But you know what I personally discovered for myself is that, and it happens a lot in romantic music, is that you have to decide, like there's often like 5-6 layers. And the problem is that often people are a little lazy, because they're so melodic that you just go with the flow. But you actually have to clean up every layer, and you have to decide, is it layer 2, is it layer 5? That's the principal one at that part or that part, and there's a lot of that. And also, you cannot change the nature of it. It's still like, romantic music that talks about, we're just getting in it's like autumn, end of winter. It's that kind of feeling. It took me a long time to understand Sibelius as well. And there's a little bit of similarities for me in the length of the phrase, of the breath. And I was not ready. I couldn't have that length of breath that he has. And now this year, I finally feel like I get it. But it took a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of effort to enjoy it when you listen to it.
Yeah.
It just takes a lot of effort. If you're going to be the one constructing the art for the people to enjoy it, I don't want to shortchange anybody when I conduct. So I just felt like, man, I need to understand the art of this piece, the architecture really well, but to bring a phrase from beginning to end. So this is a big moment for me personally because I'm finally doing it.
I actually helped him out a lot. I just told him basically the second violin part is always the most important line, and then it just cleared up the entire piece for him.
Right.
Wow, self-service at all.
I thought it was the trombones, but I guess we've gone to violin now.
Alain, can I ask a question? I'm fascinated by what you're saying because first of all, I've seen you conduct. The Concerti. I know you recently conducted all 5 in a weekend.
Yes.
The piano concertos. Right?
Indeed.
Yeah. All 4 plus rack bag twice in the weekend. 10 concertos in the 3 days.
Wow. But so how do you look at the Concerti versus the symphonies of Rachmaninoff? Because as a listener, I consider them very differently from a consumer standpoint. But I would love to ask you that question now that you've kind of
Well, we got to talk about the Symphony No. 1 because
Well, maybe not, but you look at 2, you look at the Bells, you look at Isle of the Dead. I mean, his compositions were very different at that level versus the Concerti. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that.
First of all, Rachmaninoff was a conductor. So he was conductor of Bolshoi. I mean, he had a big deal when he was young in his 20s. And then but what he really wanted to be was a composer. And you see more and more as he writes his piano concertis. And now the 4th is like a composer's concerto. and the Rachmaninoff Paganini variations are like kind of as much for the orchestra as the piano. Mind you, the piano is really hard. But Rachmaninoff wanted to be a composer, so he started conducting. He was very always efficient, super talented, very impressive. Huh? He's 6'6". I mean, it's quite something.
Yeah.
And he wrote his first symphony, and he got panned because, mainly because of the first quiz question of today. Conductor showed up drunk, and nobody really rehearsed it. And as I said, if you don't take care of those layers in Rachmaninoff, it sounds like bad music, and it's not. And it's totally the fault of the interpreter.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a new recording with Philadelphia and Yannick conducting of the first symphony. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He totally got the thing about the layers, about it, and then you can enjoy the symphony. And you cannot believe that it bombed that much, so much that he went into a depression. And composers, as you know, Evan, you basically it's like you take all your clothes off and you say, "Well, this is what I am," And people can see all.
Evan, keep your clothes on during the podcast, okay? we can't see you, but we use our imagination.
No, but you feel that people can see if you're not perfect, if it's a little fat here, if you don't look. So you always feel very it's really really sensitive, because it's basically who you are. You put it out there. If people don't play it well, if people don't like it, you can have some people don't like. But if it's like a complete disaster, like Rachmaninoff's first symphony, it can affect you a lot personally. So he didn't write one note of music for 6 years, and he left. And when the first revolution happened in 1905, not the big one, but the first one, and Russia, he left. He went to Germany, and he secretly started to write the second symphony without telling anybody, because he thought, if it's not going to pan out, I'm just not going to do it. But then somebody spilled the beans on him, and then they had to do it. And it was an immense success. So for me, it's that Rachmaninoff is concerti, especially, 1, 2, 3. They're more something that's, it's not that it's facile, like easy. It's just that, they have a special utility, especially when he moved to the States. He needed to go around, earn a living, play the beautiful melodies that he does. He wrote himself concertos, exactly like Mozart wrote his 5 violin concertos. Mozart wrote his 5 violin concertos to get out of his gig with the Archduke Colloredo, because the guy couldn't stand him. He said, I'm going to be a concert violinist. I'm going to tour Europe, and I'll be out of this gig. And that Rachmaninoff did that to earn a living, except that he left us some of the most wonderful concerto with all his concertos. So, but very different. It's there's certain utility to that, and the composition is something else. It's what he really wanted. So, and you can hear it in the symphonic poems that he wrote as well.
Yeah.
Sorry for the lengthy answer.
No, that's okay. I want to talk more about Rachmaninoff, but first I want to go back to our little quiz, right? And let's get the answers down for the quiz part that we did. You mentioned, Elaine, about the first symphony of Rachmaninoff, the conductor being drunk. That was our first question. I'm sure you all got this, right? The answer was A, Alexander Borodin.
See, I don't think... Yeah. I'm going to push back on that. I thought it was Glazunov.
Well, Elaine, you have to settle it for us. Who conducted Rachmaninoff's first symphony at the premiere?
Merwin is right.
Yeah, I don't know why I have Borodin down here. I don't have the answer listed. So
Borodin was a chemist, so maybe he made the alcohol that got Glazunov drunk. So maybe it's all tied together.
Maybe, yeah. Elaine, have you ever conducted a piece while drunk?
Don't answer that.
I don't drink.
Yeah, that's right.
But I have conducted concert while having a kidney stone.
Oh my!
And I did one of the fastest Beethoven 7 ever, because I needed to get out there and go to the hospital. But that's about it.
Wow! Now I feel bad about the background music, but let's continue with our answers here. The second question was, who showed Rachmaninoff a movie? The answer was B, Walt Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really?
He showed a movie, Mickey Mouse playing the third concerto. Is that right? Yeah, the Prelude. I just have C3. I'm assuming it's Concerto 3 or...
So there's a story about that. I'll come back to that after our quiz is over.
Okay, we'll make a note of that. Who got that one? Showed Rachmaninoff movie. Yeah, okay.
I didn't. No.
Evan, you can lie about everything because you're on the phone. But so can you, Elaine. All right, the next one. Who is the fellow student of Rachmaninoff's at the Moscow Conservatory who described Rachmaninoff as lazy? I'll add that they later became great friends, and Rachmaninoff was very, very depressed. He was depressed about everything, but when this person died, it affected him deeply. Was it Reinhold Glier? Was it Scriabin? Or was it Khachaturian? A, B, or C? The answer that I have, and it may be wrong, is B, Alexander Scriabin. Yeah?
Did not get that one.
Did anybody get that?
Glier.
I had Glier as well.
Yeah.
Scriabin.
He was a huge critique of Rachmaninoff at the beginning, like big critique of it.
Which doesn't make sense to me, because I honestly think that they're not that different. I mean, how many times do you see Scriabin and Rachmaninoff on piano recitals together? I mean,
I think it's not the piano thing, it's the composition, orchestra composition thing, because Scriabin, he said that Rachmaninoff was reactionary, like stuck in the old days.
So he wrote his piano concerto as a reaction to Rachmaninoff. It's a great concerto, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Who was not a teacher of Rachmaninoff? Zilty, Zverev, or Tchaikovsky? A, B, or C? I'm going to go with C because Tchaikovsky was not his formal teacher.
Yeah.
He was at the Moscow Conservatory, and he was more of a mentor, I think, than a teacher per se. So the answer, for the purposes of the quiz, is C.
Yay.
You all get C?
I feel like Zverev played for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Okay, we'll save that for a
Not
later
the
podcast.
Memphis Redbirds?
Not the Memphis Redbirds.
Who was Rachmaninoff's? Yeah, or the Boston Orioles or whatever they are. No, that's Baltimore. Yes.
Not a hockey fan, huh?
Anyway,
You can do better than this.
who was Rachmaninoff's literary hero as a teenager? Was it Leo Tolstoy, was it Alexander Pushkin, or was it Anton Chekhov?
They were all so
A, B,
cheerful.
or C? Yes. Just like Rachmaninoff. I mean, maybe that's why he was drawn to this particular composer who inspired a tone poem of his that he wrote when he was 19 years old. Also, you might think that he named it after himself, but he named it actually after something else, The Rock, right? R-O-C-K, The Rock, which was based on Anton Chekhov. So I'm going to go with C. Did you all get C, Anton Chekhov?
Nope, I made a mistake there.
I didn't. I guess
I had
Tolstoy.
Pushkin, so you and I were together on that.
Yeah.
He did do something basically.
I got it actually, but it was just luck.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we're going to say that Evan won that quiz because he's a special guest. Special guest always wins the quiz.
It's really hard for Brad to count.
Yeah. I wasn't
He is a
keeping
singer.
track. I was thinking it was probably either Elaine or maybe Merwin or Zach, but then I gave it to Evan, so, okay.
Just like a presidential debate.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
that in 1942, that meeting with Rachmaninoff and Walt Disney also included Vladimir Horowitz. And Horowitz and Rachmaninoff were big fans of Disney. And I'm going to challenge your research a little bit because I didn't think it was the third piano concerto. I think Mickey Mouse plays the C-sharp minor prelude.
Oh, yeah. That's what it is.
It's I think the film is The Opry House, if I'm thinking about that. It's a 1920s Mickey Mouse animation. But, if you want to think about that, that means that Rachmaninoff meets Walt Disney in Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? That documentary. Walt Disney is part of that, or Humphrey Bogart is part of that, and Walt Disney is part of that. It's a documentary. They didn't actually meet together, but
Let me bring up some music for you, Zach. Okay.
So
go ahead and
that
finish.
takes us from Rachmaninoff to Disney to Humphrey Bogart. And, Bogart also appears in Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid, another kind of pastiche where you have a bunch of different famous Hollywood legends working with Steve Martin in 1982. So that gets us from Rachmaninoff to Disney to Bogart, now to Steve Martin. And of course, if you're paying attention, a few years after that, in 2001, Steve Martin appeared in the dentist movie called Novocaine with Laura Dern and Helena Bonham Carter, and Kevin Bacon.
Well done.
So that takes us from Rachmaninoff to Kevin Bacon.
Yes, 6 degrees of separation, right? How many degrees did you do it in?
That was 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 degrees,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, very, very good.
In
Well,
case you were
Zach-
wondering why Zach didn't make as many comments as usual in the first part of the episode.
Oh no, I just
Yeah.
came up with that.
Oh, I'm sure you knew the movies, but you were just comprising the narrative thread.
There is actually another a Walt Disney to Humphrey Bogart connection, but we won't go into that.
Okay. We won't talk about that, right?
We don't talk about Humphrey.
Yes. Indeed. So let's talk some more about this Symphony Number 2, because I want to bring up this melody. Right? Which sort of haunted Rachmaninoff for his entire compositional career. He used that theme in lots of different works, and there's even a quotation of it, an indirect quotation in the Symphony Number 2. Who wants to talk about that?
I didn't know there was a quotation of it. In Symphony
Yeah.
Number 2.
Well, I may have made that up, but there is. What do you say, Elaine?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, second movement. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm right.
You know, like the
Yep.
thing there.
Yep.
There's one more note in it, and then when the brass play it by augmentation and diminution later, you hear it a bunch in that movement. He's super obsessed about that, but you know, the guy's always depressed, and then you need to have a dies irae in there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it has that nostalgia as music, constant nostalgia, and it's somebody who cannot live in his country either. You know, his country, what he thought of his country was taken away. You know, and he had to emigrate, and he had a good life, but it was not where he was born and where he wanted to be.
Yeah. And it didn't take you 20 years to find that melody in the Second Symphony, right? That's not what held you back?
No.
Okay.
For me, the second movement was the gateway to the symphony. It was the threshold to the symphony. That's how I got in, because
Yeah.
I was not able to get especially the first movement. The thing is that, you know, what really bugged me is that I started listening to it, and many years ago, many decades ago, and it's the problem with it is that not so many people respect his music. Because people always said, "Oh, it's too long," and so there are no less than 29 versions of cuts in Rachmaninoff Second Symphony.
Wow.
I went through all of them, and we're doing Rachmaninoff Symphony from beginning to end, no cuts. You know, and that's as he wrote it, and that's as we should play it. The only thing we're not doing is the repeat of the first movement, because that's a choice you can do or not do, but we're not taking any music away. It's 58 minutes.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
And how many cuts are you using in the Evan Williams piece?
We don't talk about that.
Actually, Evan, I was
Be 7 minutes long.
because I mean, we were talking about how Rachmaninoff himself is using so many allusions and quotations, and you consciously decided to very specifically reference, so many different composers. How did you choose the themes from Rachmaninoff? I mean, it's like going into this giant garden and trying to choose what vegetable to harvest.
Low-hanging fruit. And did you use the Dies Irae theme?
I did not use Dies Irae, and to answer Merwin's question, I mean, the easy answer is I just chose my favorites.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, tell us again what those are. I mean, obviously, you quoted the Paganini Rhapsody, right?
Yes, so we start with the second concerto, the opening of the second concerto in C minor, and then there's the third concerto, and then the Rhapsody on Paganini. There's one of my favorite pieces. His vocal music doesn't get the respect it deserves, I feel. And a lot of people love the Vespers, but I love his liturgy. And so I quote the second movement of his liturgy. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Now, when you do the piano concertos, are you using pianos in this piece, or is it orchestral?
So I was not allowed to use the piano, but that's okay. The deal we made was that I got to use electronics, and so I'm using a piano sound of electronics, and that's cool because I get to make it sound. Sometimes I get to make it sound like it's an old archival recording, even though it's not. Or sometimes I get to make it sound like it's, distorted and in the distance. And so that was a lot of fun. So, it uses sounds of pianos.
And I love that you go to the vintage sound because Rachmaninoff happens to be one of these composers that we can actually hear performing.
Yeah.
And it's all in those 1920s.
I'm using his own recording of the Second Symphony, but I didn't want to get in trouble with Columbia or something.
I'm sure it's in public domain by now. I actually just got it. So I collect 78s, but I got a Rachmaninoff 78 from 1909 recording. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Hey, Zach.
Yes.
Tell us how many 78s it takes to have a full concerto.
Oh my gosh, it's
Is
hilarious.
this a dad joke?
No, it's these things are.
It's true.
It's probably. I'm thinking about. I have the Rock 2 or Rock 3, and I think it's
with Horowitz, right?
With Horowitz, right? I think it's 10 sides.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe 12.
10 sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how many records does it take to change a light bulb? Though? That's the question we all want to know.
Actually, you never get to the light bulb because you just keep going around and around and around and around.
Oh man, good one. Now, Zach, you had a story you were going to tell, and you asked me to remind you of it later. Remember? Or did you just tell the story?
I thought it was the Disney.
It was the Disney thing.
Oh, the Disney story. Yeah.
But you look at me that way. I haven't slept a lot this week, Brad. You sent me into a state of panic.
I wook up at 2:00 a.m. this morning, so yeah,
You get very excited about this podcast. I can see.
I was indeed.
Well, if I think about the Rock 2, I do remember seeing this as a boy at the Toledo Symphony and just being enraptured by Alain referred to the layers before, and Rachmaninoff's music is quite lush. Yeah. And I remember where I was sitting. I was on the main floor, right of center, about halfway back when I saw the Rock 2 performed Second Symphony, and I put that down as a very special evening of my childhood because it was so memorable. I'm excited to hear it again. I don't know that I've really seen it since then performed live, and of course to pair that with this wonderful inspiration from Evan Williams in a premiere, this is going to be such a fine performance.
So just to add something on what Zach was saying about the layers that you were referring to, what I said is that the big challenge is that if you cut it too lean, it's not Rachmaninoff anymore. So you have to find the right dosage that it doesn't become all of a sudden like too light, too French. It's still like the very romantic, thick Russian music, but it's quite a challenge, and I really hope everybody will appreciate the work we put in.
So let me add another layer onto your comment about layers, onto my comment about layers, which is on your comment about layers. Do you sense that there was a reason that Rachmaninoff had such a special relationship with the Philadelphia Orchestra? Was there something unique about that ensemble that suited his music?
Well, you cannot talk about the Philadelphia Orchestra without talking about the Philadelphia sound. Mm-hmm. We won't go into that too much, but I'm sure the first time he heard that sound, he said that's the sound, that's kind of sound that my melody must have.
Yeah. Mm. Too bad he never heard the Toledo Symphony, huh?
Yeah. Well, Toledo has a special connection also. We play Rachmaninoff a lot,
Yeah, 6 degrees. Right there.
True.
Only one. Toledo Symphony plays Rachmaninoff. One.
Yeah, one degree of separation.
We get this opportunity to hear Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. We get to hear, an air in in André Mathieu, and then we get to hear Evan Williams looking back to Rachmaninoff and celebrating some of his favorite themes. So it's a very Rachmaninoff-centered performance, even though it's not all Rachmaninoff. But this also is really special because the wonderful couple who's underwriting the performance, John and Barbara Burson, love Rachmaninoff. And when they saw this originally on our schedule, I don't know when we originally pandemic programmed this, but it's one of these things that we finally get to celebrate. They've been looking forward to this performance for 2 years now. And I love it when we can take somebody's interest and passion and find a perfect performance like this to celebrate what really moves them. So really excited for that too.
Yeah. Evan, were you given an extra 2 years then during the pandemic to write this piece?
No, this was, we thought about this collaboration in the middle of the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually feel like this version of the program, this iteration of it there's such a weird thing to say that there are side benefits to a pandemic, but this program is a more fully realized program than it would have been like 2 or 3 years ago. It's definitely the right version of the program for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Evan, you're sort of like the great grandchild of Rachmaninoff, I think, on this program. Well, it's happening this Friday and Saturday. It's May 13th and 14th at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art Peristyle, the Romantic Rhapsodies concert. We'll link to that from the podcast. It's conducted by Alain Trudel with pianist Jean-Philippe Sylvestre, music of Sergei Rachmaninoff, also André Mathieu, and Evan Williams, who has joined us by phone today. Evan, we can't wait to see you here in Toledo and to hear this wonderful music. Thanks so much for joining us on Toledo Symphony Lab.
Thanks for having me.
This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of this program as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple, Google, and Spotify. And don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO's streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. My thanks to Zach Vassar, Alain Trudel, Merwin Hsu, and special guest composer Evan Williams. I'm Brad Cresswell. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 81.